Hello, everyone. I'm Nicole Rathy, the project manager for AI for Manufacturing Canada. Today, we'll be speaking with industry experts about how to best adopt AI for manufacturing. This panel will be led by Jay Myers, the CEO of NGen Canada. Jay is an award-winning business economist with a specialization in industrial and technological change. Our two featured guests are Dana Watanabe of Linamar and Erin Grant of Impact AI. Dana is the Data and Analytics Manager working towards improving data literacy and AI adoption. And Erin is the Machine Learning Solutions Architect, where she utilizes neural networks for computational mechanic applications relating to weld inspection process. We will have a question and answer period at the end of our session today. Feel free to submit your questions through the chat box or at the end of the session. Without further ado, I'll pass it off to Jay to kick us off.
Thanks very much, Nicole. You know, it's really easy for me to kick off a discussion like this when I have experts like Dana and Erin who can pitch in here and correct me when I'm wrong. Of course, we're at NGen really focusing on building advanced manufacturing solutions, leading edge solutions, integrating a number of different technologies to come up with something that is really unique and really very important in terms of commercial potential for applications in manufacturing, not only in Canada, but right around the world. And so many of these applications involve automation, but also involve artificial intelligence and machine learning today. In fact, there's been so much hype around AI and so much written about how AI is going to replace many jobs, how everything is going to be automated, that maybe we better take a step back and take a look at how AI is being used today in manufacturing and think about the best ways to implement AI and some of the requirements that companies actually need in order to do that productively. This goes to heart of a big challenge, I think, and it's not just Canadian manufacturers, but it's manufacturers around the world. Some of the biggest consulting groups like Deloitte and KPMG and Bain report that 75–80% of all advanced manufacturing automation transformation projects fail. And, you know, a couple of years ago when we were taking a look at some of the challenges of adopting advanced technology, not just AI, but advanced technologies in general in Canadian manufacturing, what we found was that a very high percentage, 80% of companies had invested in some form of advanced manufacturing technology in the previous 3 years. And the survey that we carried out with Statistics Canada, 6,000 companies involved in it, then asked, well, what were the purposes of making those investments? But the most interesting question was, did you achieve your business objective as a result of the investment in the technology? And over 60% of companies said no. That really doesn't, it's not a technology issue. It's an issue about how best to manage technology to achieve business objectives. And I think that's so important today. Companies make major investments in new technology, and all too often you see pieces of equipment, robotic systems or 3D printers or other apps that are standing idle, that aren't being used as productively as they should be used. And that's a reflection, I think, of maybe certainly not the power of the technology as much as probably the fact that a lot of thought didn't really go into where that technology was going to be implemented in the first place, or what would be required in order to operate that technology as effectively or as productively as it could be operated. I think the same thing goes with artificial intelligence as well. AI has huge potential in almost every part of manufacturing and supply chain operations. From logistics and risk assessment to finding out where improvements can be made, and systems optimization and materials handling, financial planning, all the way through to rapid prototyping, and of course the embedding autonomy in new processes and in equipment, in new products. All of this can is part of the potential or the promise of AI today. The question is, though, is that all feasible for companies? And I guess I usually apologize for being an economist, but I'm pretty simple-minded. I think of AI simply as a process of data management, a process of prediction, and using that prediction that leading into greater autonomy, smart products, smart processes. But basically, it's a system of prediction based on data that is fed into this system. So in my mind, there are two key questions. One is, where in a process can a system of prediction, or the introduction of a system of prediction, improve that process? I think that's a pretty simple management question, but there's a lot to it. What are important processes? How do these processes add to customer value? What sort of improvements should be made in these critical processes? Where does AI come into play here? And what are the skill sets? What are the requirements for successful implementation of AI systems? What type of data is required? What level of quality of data is required? And I think these are all big questions that I think any company looking at implementing AI solutions has to look at here. And that's why I'm so glad to be joined by Dana and Erin, because that's exactly what they're going to be helping us work through today. So let me set the stage there. We are at NGen have made significant investments. We'll continue to make investments in the application of AI systems in advanced manufacturing. But we're looking for projects and opportunities to invest in solutions that make sense, and solutions that really have a big impact on manufacturing productivity, on the commercial potential of new processes in manufacturing. But also, we're very, very keen to make sure that companies that are implementing AI solutions have the right capabilities, the right skill sets, the right data, in order to make sure that that these solutions are being implemented not only productively but profitably for a company as well. Any technology, AI included, has to be implemented in a way to achieve business objectives at the end of the day. So start with business objectives and work from there in terms of the processes that are required and the improvements where prediction can help in process improvement to get to those business objectives at the end of the day. So with that, Dana, why don't I pass it over to you? Tell us a little bit about your background and the story of AI implementation at Linamar.
Thanks, Jay. So my name's Dana. I'm the data and analytics manager for Linamar. I also sit on our strategic AI council, and I was the project manager for we had a 2022 AI initiative last year that I ran. So the purpose of that initiative that we ran last year is, as a business, we really wanted to enable folks at the plant and facility level to be able to utilize their data better, and then also to be starting to look into opportunities to apply machine learning and predictive analytics into those processes. Prior to that, we'd done some experimentation, more so at the corporate level, and because we are such a decentralized operation, we have 60 facilities worldwide. It's very much ingrained in our corporate culture to have an entrepreneurial spirit. Those facilities are really take ownership of their own processes, their own success. So we realized a centralized approach wasn't going to fit with our culture. So then that left us with, so how do we make this accessible and enable everybody as opposed to having this sort of top-down kind of approach. So that's what the goal was for last year. The way that we did that is we really focused on training. So we had a bit of a two-pronged approach. We had all of our facilities globally provide us with 2 people that they had selected to be a part of this initiative. They were not, we had some people that had a technical background. We also had a lot of automation engineers, we had materials managers, so a lot of knowledge about what processes were important, from bringing in the people to participate in the initiative. Is we really wanted to make sure, and then from there we upskilled them in data literacy and how to look for opportunities. So we had about around 150 people participating in the initiative. Throughout the year, they ran through some data literacy training. So we trained them. The very first thing we trained them on was how to identify opportunities, really focusing on you don't want to use AI, sort of like you were saying, Jay, you don't want to use the technology just for the sake of using technology. You want to make sure that you're actually solving a business problem. So that's really what we trained them in, is how do you look at your business problems? How do you figure out what processes have data that could benefit from adding some type of automation or some type of like predictive analytics into that process to help be more efficient. So that was the first thing we focused on. We also gave them some training in data quality. Anyone that's working in this space understands how important the data quality is to having a successful output. But we didn't approach it in a traditional data quality way. We did speak to the concepts, but everything we trained, we tied back to continuous improvement and process that are already common in the manufacturing space. So one of the things sort of our approach was within manufacturing, there's a continuous improvement cycle. So plan, do, check, act. And then as you're implementing improvements, that's an iterative process. So that was one of the ways that we explained this approach to our engineering teams, to our facility teams, so that we kind of said, you're doing this already, basically. You're doing continuous improvement initiatives, you're going and looking at the data in your processes, you're doing analysis. So the only difference really is that by utilizing machine learning and your data more effectively, you can automate some of that analysis and move into being more predictive as opposed to reactive. So then in addition to the training, we also had each of our facilities needed to complete a project themselves. We had within scope, it could be automation, could have some predictive elements, could be focused on just improving your data management capabilities. So this actually, we had a lot of success approaching it this way. We had about 80% of our facilities were able to successfully complete a project. All of them successfully completed the training. And then of those 80% of the plants that completed projects, about 60% of them were in that more AI space, so had predictive elements. So, when you think about that, that turned out to about 25 successful AI projects. Wow. And then, 150 people trained in data management. So we had quite a bit of success, and then now we're the focus this year is really on getting those teams to collaborate to look for read across to the other plants. So this approach, is very much like a Linamar. We worked with like what our culture was, what our strengths were already, but it did really work well for us, this approach.
I think that's great, Dana. First of all, what a great way to demystify AI at the beginning, but to be able to integrate this into your processes rather than trying to reinvent process as a result of the technology, I think is key as well. And as you say, plan, do, check, act. What a great way to describe what an algorithm does, or what a good, successful AI solution actually is supposed to do, which is to learn as it's as it operates. You're talking about some of the successes. Say a few things about some of the challenges along the way. How easy was it to get everybody, first of all, from a pretty extensive organization, all in line with this this initiative, and what were some of the sort of the feedback of some of the people on the line, or some of the people who are actually using AI to do their job better?
Yeah, definitely. So one of our challenges was because we are so decentralized, we had a really big range of maturity, where we had some plants that already had hired resources that had some more technical capabilities in this area. And then we had other folks that were, you go in and how are you doing your quality checks? And it's, data, they're writing it on a piece of paper. So how do we address this like huge range? So one of the things we did is we partnered up those sort of stronger plants with our plants that weren't quite as mature. So we did have a handful that finished projects a little bit earlier. Like I said, they were a little bit more mature. And then we paired them with plants that had similar projects, but that weren't quite as mature. So that was one of the ways we addressed that challenge is we really focused on connecting the plants together, as well as just from a corporate support perspective. I couldn't individually manage 60 projects, and that wouldn't necessarily have been the best thing for the business, even if I could. So that was how we dealt with sort of the scope of the initiative, as well as is to really rely on like how can we connect our resources to collaborate and help each other.
That's great. Well, let's come back to that. I'm going to ask Erin to say a few things about some of the use cases that Impact AI has developed. One of the central theme here is, how do we use AI to solve actual problems in manufacturing and improve the processes around that. One of the things I hear a lot, Erin, is from the point of view of AI companies themselves. What are those big challenges or big problems and similar problems across the manufacturing? Because AI can do a lot of things. How do you focus a business that is AI specializing in AI? How do you focus on processes that are very strategic for manufacturers? But over to you to tell us a little bit about the use case that you've been working on.
Well, that's a great question, Jay, and thanks for the intro. And thanks, Dana, for explaining some of your projects at Linamar. And so Dana, you were sort of talking about how your approach was more top down. You've got this company approach where you're like, we want to improve data management. Well, our goal as an AI-based company is to be that sort of driving force for manufacturing companies that might not have had that sort of top-down approach previously. They don't have the facilities in-house to implement machine learning or data management strategies themselves. So that's where we come in. We're here to help them harness pre-existing data that they might already have available to them to address these specific business goals that they have in mind. So a use case that Impact AI is close to is in automotive suppliers, increasing their competitiveness and profitability. And so one project we're working on right now is the manufacture of laser welded steel sheets. This is like, it's funny, like ours is much more niche and very specific. It's not so much there are multiple plants, there's like a specific project, and we sort of tailor our approach to exactly what this project needs. So these laser welded steel sheet manufacturers are looking for ways to increase productivity without having to add in additional lines, additional factories, additional like physical equipment. So their question is, how can we improve productivity using existing assets? And Jay, as you touched on, where can a system of prediction improve their process? And that's where we come in. Where can we find places in their process where they have existing data and they can harness it to achieve this business goal? And in this case, in this laser welded steel sheet, we came to the conclusion that it lies in the existing sensor data from the weld inspection process. So currently, the welded steel sheets have a quality inspection process for each part, and for each weld to check that it's structurally sound and doesn't have defects in it. And it has several manually determined thresholds that have come from years of working in the process to determine whether a part has failed or not. But what's lacking here is it doesn't tell you why. And there are several different types of defects that can form in the weld. They each have their own formation mechanism. And there's just so much data coming in, thousands of parts a day. And, previously all these sensor data from all these different sensors were coming into like a single line, so that an operator on the line could look at it and visually go, okay, this passes a single threshold, it's good or it's bad. And essentially that data was then, after they've decided if the part is good or bad, that data is just thrown out. And this is where we see an opportunity for machine learning. What if we start to save all of the sensor information? We don't narrow it down to a single line anymore, but we start saving, part after part. Is it coming through? Is it good? Is it bad? Now we have this huge amount of data that can help inform our future decision making. And this is where I think the real power of AI comes in, is it can make sense of larger patterns in the data that might have previously gotten lost in the noise or been obscure to a person trying to look at all of this data in mass, and the important thing here is we can now notice correlations between sensor reading levels and defect profiles, or the number of defected parts. So, coming in and saying, okay, now you've got this pass-fail threshold. What if we told you what kind of defect was in the weld? How many parts are failing? How often are they failing? What happens if you change a parameter in your weld line and suddenly there are more parts failing? We can now notice these correlations and determine specific failure modes using these data analytics, like the process, and also combined with the power of AI. And this, this sort of feedback loop that we can implement here allows the appropriate corrective action to be implemented more rapidly, giving line managers more confidence in the process, which ultimately provides the manufacturer with the confidence needed to run the line faster, more often, make these changes quicker. And all of a sudden we have this AI-based solution that directly addresses the business goal, which is achieving higher productivity with existing assets. So that's sort of the main use case that we're working on the project. Yeah.
What strikes me though, and I know we started talking about where does a system of prediction help to improve a process, but you're not only improving the welding line and the quality of the welds and being able to add prediction with respect to potential failure of the weld, but the information that you're gathering there can be used right across, really to improve the entire system, because you can tell, maybe it's a materials problem, maybe it's a problem in the way that the product was put together in the first place before even coming into the welding line there. So the intelligence that you are able to generate has value beyond just improving the process itself.
Yeah, and that's why it's not just AI, it's big data and and AI. We have now this ability to process like such huge volumes of data, and with that comes huge, like high level improvements, instead of just focusing on the minutia, which is the really powerful and incredible part of AI, and I think why people are so interested in implementing it.
So tell us too, Erin, about some of the challenges that that you face when you're working with manufacturers, maybe in terms of some of their expectations and but also in challenges in implementing AI systems?
Yeah, well, I was just, hearing Dana, you talk about some of the problems you were facing in different plants. And it's like, I absolutely resonate with those. You've got people writing things down, depending on where you're coming into a company, and you can have people who are like, they're championing AI, they're like, we want to do this, we want to implement this technology. But then you've got, people who have been using processes that have worked pretty well, or they've been using gut feel or human intuition. And if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Why are we spending time, money, energy to put in place processes that we already know how to do? So that can definitely be tough when you're like, talking with someone about, sensor wiring on the line, and you're spending all this time trying to get this data. And it's like, why are we doing this? And so that's why the work to understand the business case beforehand is so important, because we know this is a tool that can help everyone. Like, a proper AI business goal will benefit all levels of a company, not just the upper levels. It's not to take away jobs or automate people out. It's to make decisions easier, to give people working on the lines, more visibility, more data, to help them make decisions faster. And so I find that it can just, when you're really stuck in the nitty-gritty details, having this goal and this idea that we want to work towards, it can take a little convincing to tell people that, this is really the fantastic tool that we say it is, especially when it, you hit a lot of roadblocks or, yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that. We actually, the worker level, like the people that were engaged in the initiative, were very engaged and very into it. We had more struggles at the management level.
Really?
Yeah. But yes, but the management level is also the one that's approving the investment, right? So and also, like, typically has been someone who is making those kinds of decisions based on gut feel, and has spent their career doing so. So
oh no,
even personally, I think it's a little bit of a harder change typically, that was approved. We had each subject, and they all required seeing a minimum level of ROI. So yeah, there's definitely it definitely some like value. I think it makes things easier to do when you are considering like that ROI and the business goal up front.
Yeah, and I mean, the other part, there's so many challenges, but you can have this idea of an ROI. You can have, we're going to apply machine learning. We know exactly how we're going to do it. We know where it's going to go, how it's going to make the business model 1,000 times better. And then you go into the process and you take a look at the data, and no one has ever tried to work with the data in this way before. And you find out that, sometimes the machine turns off or the power goes out, and it's like, it's been fine because no one's ever needed to know what the last, 100 runs were, or the last 1,000. And so, you can know all you want how you're going to use AI and like what you're going to do with it. There's so much work that needs to get done before you can even get to the AI application. It's what you said, there's a common, adage in machine learning, when you're learning how to create machine learning models, and it's garbage in, garbage out. The data processing and structuring is of the utmost importance. And so you can, this goal of having AI as implementation is really good. It's just the data structuring is absolutely first and foremost, and requires oftentimes massive amounts of work.
Yeah, definitely. And we came across that as well, like your example of even where you have machines that is generating data, but you don't look at it, or you look at it once to make a decision, and then you're not saving it anywhere. But because we had so many people trying to do projects, then we had people stepping back and looking at their processes and treating data as more of an asset. So then thinking about things like how within our process, how can we manage having good quality data the same way we would manage having good quality parts. And so I think that just that exposure to trying to do a project really helped our culture in that way as well, in like treating data as more of an asset.
Yeah, that's a really good way of putting it.
Yeah, it is a good way of putting it. And, you know, there's data as an asset. The quality of the data is really, really important. But one of the other challenges I think a lot of manufacturers face is that they're collecting data from so many sources, and in some cases overwhelmed by the amount of data that they have. So I've, you know, when we talk about continuous improvement and look at what is important in the process is what delivers value to customers, and what is waste is the non-value adding activity there. And a lot of manufacturers say, well, you know, I've got a lot of data that in my mind is wasteful here, and it's wasteful unless I find a purpose for it there. But what would your advice be as AI practitioners to a company that says, well, and this is I hear this all the time, we've got too much data, we wouldn't even know where to start?
Wow. I mean, I think it's interesting, too much data, because that's why I think AI is such a valuable tool in manufacturing, is because they have, like, manufacturers often have data rich processes, you know, with these sensors that are constantly outputting information. But I think that's maybe the role of, you know, an AI focused team, is really stamping out that business goal that you want. Because it's true, there is a lot of data, there is a lot of noise, there is a lot of ways to get lost. And it's not to say that all of that information is going to be useful at once. But that's the thing is, you know, AI applications work best when they're targeted to narrow niche applications. You're not going to come into a company and say, okay, we're just going to take all your data and we're going to put it in, you know, this one program, and suddenly, you know, it's like, it's not a quick fix. You want to target, okay, we're going to improve this weld line. You know, how are we going to do that? We're going to look at the sensor data. And you can have a multitude of different ways that AI is implemented in your process. And so I think that's it, is like, where do you start? One step at a time, you know, very small steps. It can be overwhelming to take in how much data is going on, but I think it's just not to see that as a challenge, but to take it as an opportunity and say, this is room for continual improvement here, because we have so much information coming in.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
I would agree. Like, I mean, we had maybe the opposite challenge, where sometimes we would go in to a plant and they would say, well, we want to do this type of this type of AI project, this is our business goal, and then here's all these like Excel files this is what we do right now. And so they only want to give you the data they're already looking at. So then your output or your model is going to be inherently biased, because you're building in kind of what they already think the solution could be, versus letting the data tell them. So that's how we kind of approach it, where, you know, give us what you have, like, any, you know, focus in on a process, like you were saying, Erin. You can't just like do a mass, here's all of our data, and it's going to just like say, oh, this is what you need to do, and it's like a, you know, flip the switch, easy button. But yeah, like focusing in on what is the project, what's the goal, what data you have, what's all the data that you have that relates to that goal. And then, yeah, working with someone like yourself or someone internally that understands how to do the feature engineering to like further define that data set. So that was how I've seen that play out at least at Linamar.
Right. Now, I know large companies have a lot of data, And one of the questions we have in the chat is, what about small companies? And Erin, from your experience, or Dana, because I know that Linamar is a big company, but you're dealing with smaller facilities here, and a real decentralized type of structure too. But does AI work for small companies as well as it does for large?
You want to take that, Erin? I don't know what your experience is there.
Yeah. I think, I mean, the answer is yes, and like asterisks. So it doesn't necessarily matter how many people your company is, or how big your process is. I think the thing that can sometimes get lost is that artificial intelligence, and especially machine learning tools, are really incredible, complex statistical processors. So the question is, do you need this type of statistical process in your company? And, you know, you can have a company of 5 people, but if you're getting data from, I don't know, like cars driving every day, or you're looking at big trends in people and movement or processes, and then yes, you need that applies just as well. It doesn't matter if you have 100 people or 3 people. You know, the ability of AI to suit niche applications means that AI-based tools are no longer exclusively available to large companies with large budgets. And I think, you know, in Canada, this actually presents a really important opportunity because we have a business makeup of like many smaller organizations. And, you know, this is a technology that's able to take these small companies to compete on a global stage. And that's, you know, we have this availability of advanced algorithms, you know, computational power, sensors that enable real-time data gathering. And so it can really be implemented anywhere. People do it at home by themselves, you know. It's like, I think that's why it's such an interesting tool, because it's not so much about like how big your company is or how small it is. It's about the problem. And is this the right tool for your application? I don't know if Dana, you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, 100%. Like, I agree with everything you just said. It really doesn't matter how large your organization is. It really comes down to, do you have the volume of data that you need to train a model? Which you can. There's you know, there's lots of open source models and things available, you know, that are available to maybe a smaller company that doesn't have the budget that a larger organization does. You know, you can do a lot of really like amazing things with Python, that, you know, we find like a lot of students, they just know Python. I have, you know, teenagers in my life that do it as a hobby. So, you know, there's definitely opportunity for like smaller organizations to be able to use AI. You really just need to have the volume of data.
You know, and there's so much data. I mean, we've been talking about data that's being collected within a company, but there's so much data outside of the company as well that, you know, we've got, as NGen, a couple of AI applications. One is, you know, when we look at the challenges manufacturers face, every company and every line thinks that the challenges are unique to them. And in reality, probably 80% are common across industry, particularly when it comes to solving some production problems using technologies like AI. But it's so easy to gather that information today, and to easily get that information just through scraping the web. For instance, here with some of the AI tools that are on the market today, to gather that intelligence. So, you know, the use of AI in planning, in logistics today, and risk analysis, and business planning, business development, is those are important applications as well. And just as a one example, again, the way that NGen is using some AI tools, we have to do due diligence on if we're looking at providing funding for project applicants. We have to do some due diligence on all of those projects or all of the project partners. We're using an AI system or an AI solution that helps us basically conduct that due diligence in a matter of days, a couple of days, really automating the process, reducing our costs, because that due diligence involves basically a screening of almost 40,000 websites. And there's no, we don't have a team big enough to do that in 4 years there. So, but we can do it in a matter of hours there. So but
Wow.
we had a very, very specific problem that where we were looking for an AI application. And I guess, so here's another question. There are more and more AI solutions available in the market, and some very, very customized requirements for those solutions in manufacturing. Some manufacturers try to do it themselves, and of course, a lot of companies are looking for solution providers as well. Is there and maybe I'll ask Dana first and then Erin, what are some of the advantages or what are some of the drawbacks of trying to do this like a do-it-yourself approach to AI?
Yeah, that's a good question. So we have both at Linamar. So we didn't prescribe you have to use X tool to do your analysis. What our feedback was, so we have some that built them internally using things that were available open source. We have some that we do have a few like PhD engineers that have built things themselves and then been able to share those with other facilities. But then we do also have a little bit things that are a little bit more off the shelf. So like cameras that already have the models built in. So yeah, and then we had others working with, we had some that work with universities. We have some NGen projects. So at the phase that we're at, we are leaving it up to the facility and kind of testing out a few different avenues. But we didn't prescribe you need to use X tool. But we're also not saying saying we're going to stand up a very big internal team to do this ourselves, because mostly just because we found the length of time it would take for, say, like a corporate IT team to build out solutions for every single facility. It wasn't as scalable for us as kind of enabling the plant level.
And Erin, how simple is it or complex is it to customize some of your solutions for specific applications in manufacturing?
Well, just talking about, DIY approach to AI, I think sometimes if you really are like, we want to implement AI in our business process, that's almost, putting the cart before the horse. Do you need AI in your process? That's sort of the first question. You can really want to have it. We are using machine learning, we're using the most advanced tools, but the question is, do you need it? And so that's why I think having, whoever it is that you are, whether it's in-house or whether it's, a service provider coming in, the question is like, is this the right tool for the business case that you're trying to address? And so maybe that's why it can be helpful to have someone external come in and, really analyze it and say like, I think that's what our team does is, yes, we're impact AI, but is AI the right tool for the job? And sort of having that perspective to say, oh, actually, well, you can manage this in a different way or with a different tool or something maybe less complex can get the job done that, will save you money, will save you time. Having that check even before you try to go down the road of implementing AI I think is really important.
Mhm. Yeah, I would agree that this that's something we do in our like application development process already. But and then we try to talk to the plants about that too. But yeah, like look, what are you trying to do? What are your actual requirements? Is this the right fit to solve that solution? And it may or may not be the right technological fit. So yeah,
Yeah.
and that is a good point.
Yeah. What is it? If you have a hammer, every problem is a nail. Like,
Yes, yeah, exactly. Yeah. And
you
that was
know,
some of our challenge in our earlier projects that we tried to take on is we want to do an AI project, not
right.
we want to solve this business problem and what are our different options, AI being one of them.
Yeah, that's a really important change of the question and like
It is.
distinction.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
And of course, figuring out whether a company is AI ready, which as both of you have explained before too. But so here's a question for both of you, but from two different perspectives. So Dana, if you're looking to work with a partner or with an AI solution provider, what are you looking for in terms of the capabilities of that company?
Mhm.
And Erin, if you're looking at working for or with a manufacturing company,
Mhm.
what are the capabilities of that manufacturing company that you're looking for as well? Because you're going to be selective in terms of the customers that you want to work with as well. So Dano, I'll ask you first.
Yeah, so for me personally, I really liked I like to work when we're dealing directly with the technical teams. So we've had, not to say we don't work with the bigger companies too, but sometimes working with a company that's a little bit smaller, a little bit more in the startup phase, I can pair their engineers with like my engineers and my technical teams, and then my team really is providing that operational knowledge. And then I'm by working closely with our partners engineering team or like machine learning engineers, we're getting like that knowledge transfer, and then there tends to be like really good collaboration, and we're almost I like to see us working as like one team as opposed to like Linamar and their service provider. So that's one of the things that I look for when we're looking at potential partners to bring in.
Yeah, I have to agree with you there, Dana. It's not necessarily, how data ready is your team, because, we can work with companies that have no data management implemented, or companies who are just like, we need like the final push. We know how we want to implement it, but we don't know exactly, the tools to use. But I think the key here that you were talking about, Dana, like, and you said like teams that are in the startup phase, yes, but I think the key here, and I think the key here is this adaptable mindset or an open-minded approach. Because quite often you're going to come into a project and then there's just a lot of things that can go wrong or that may take a lot of time. And I think you want to work with a team that's going to be willing to overcome those hurdles and those obstacles with you. And, having worked in machine learning for like a few number of years now, I have really like seen the power of this tool, and I've seen it come up with some really incredible insights. And honestly, sometimes it does seem almost like, like it's like a little magic. It's like a little like, wow, this is really cool. This tool is really incredible, the power here. But there's just a huge caveat on that. Only after we've done an incredible amount of work to prepare, structure, clean the data, address the problem, and prepare all the data for this tool to use. So I think it's working with people who have that vision in mind and who are okay with a lot of maybe previously unthought of setbacks that are going to come up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a really good point. I think on both sides, when you're doing these types of projects, definitely need to be adaptable. And then it is really exciting to build something together. When you do get like something to work at the end and you're able to like deliver value, it is really, you know, like fun almost and exciting to like get to build
Yeah.
something together and see it work. Yeah, for sure.
So we've got some interesting questions here that I want to make sure we cover, and our time's running out. So let me start with a general question, then a very specific one here, and maybe the general one kind of builds on our discussion right now. So there are models out there, or AI solutions that are trained on specific manufacturing problems and solutions that can be applied to problems, but the problems are very specific for a company and a process. There, how easy is it to customize some of these off-the-shelf AI solutions?
So for us, the most off-the-shelf ones we've used are the cameras. There's still, but just because, you know, here's a camera and we have 10,000 images of parts, it seems like, well, we just run our images through the camera and it'll work. And we do have multiple plants using a single, you know, the same type of camera for different processes. But there's still challenges. So there's one of the challenges we had is, okay, maybe we have lots of pictures of good parts, but we didn't have enough pictures of bad parts. So then we have to go find pictures of bad parts so that we have enough representation in the training. There could also be, now you put the camera on the line, but you know, the part needs to be at a certain level of cleanliness. Or you need to dry the part because you have a washing station and then you need to dry water droplets off of it. So there's actually integrating the model into the processes is its own thing as well. So even with the off-the-shelf applications, being able to easily customize them by using your own data set. Yes, I've seen that work successfully, but you still need to integrate it into your overall process. And you also still need to make sure that you have all of the data that model needs to train. I don't know if you have anything to add to that, Erin.
Yeah, I think that's a really good way of putting it. I think all AI will require a little bit of fine-tuning unless you are doing exactly what the original creator was intending, which often you're not. You're adding your own slight issue or slight focus or different flavor that will require you to change it.
And AI learns along the way as well. So what AI does at the beginning isn't necessarily what it's going to do as it evolves and works on a particular problem as well. We've been talking really generally, and I wanted to ask both of you, what are some of the neat AI applications that you've seen here that really do make a difference, and but also just areas where, and maybe this area just from your experience, some of the key areas that manufacturers are really getting high value out of AI applications right now, regardless of size.
Yeah, I can start with mine. So the vision ones to me are just really cool and also have a lot of business value. So for us, being able to replace like a human inspection with a intelligent system has a lot of business, there's a lot of financial benefit, but also it's really difficult for us to hire people to do those jobs because they're not jobs that people want to do. It's not, and you also can't do it well for 8 hours a day as well as a machine can. So any kind of application that takes away a job that a human doesn't want to do or can't safely do or can't accurately do, those to me are the best ones. The other one that I've seen that I really liked was it was around and I'm not going to use it was more to do with like bin picking where we needed to move a part. But the part was really, really heavy. And there actually wasn't a huge significant ROI financially. to automate that process. But there was a big improvement in terms of like the employee engagement, the health and safety. We're no longer putting our people at risk by having to lift these heavy parts all day. So that was another one that I really liked to see, that you know, focused on addressing a challenge or an issue that wasn't necessarily cost savings driven.
Erin,
Yeah.
what about you?
Yeah, I think defect detection, image processing and video processing, I agree, is really interesting. A lot because it can overlap in fields. We can use similar techniques to processes that find tumors, to apply that to finding a defect in a weld from a sensor image, which I think is that like crossover and that potential to have collaboration over different domains, I think is really interesting. And I mean, personally, I think ChatGPT is very neat. I don't know if you guys have seen some of that. It can write code. I'm terrified.
I haven't seen that, but that is pretty cool.
Oh, those are good examples. Two quick questions. One, Dana, when you're looking at and working at it with various facilities, did Linamar create any kind of central guidelines for data quality, data analysis?
Yeah, that's a good question. So we are in the, that's what we're focusing on this year. So we still have the same group of folks that did the training last year, worked on their projects. We've added in some automation engineering components as well. And then there's myself and a few other teams at corporate where we are working on creating some best practices for like data quality, data management, machine learning, things like that, that we can then share down to the facilities, and then they can pick what makes sense for their business. But yeah, we definitely are working on like a more of a global standardization that we can provide.
Great. And check out the chat too, because we've got some interesting comments about expert systems and the role of knowledge engineers originally going into to identify particular problems where AI could be used. And that was, you know, that's been going on for years. So we're kind of talking now about an era when AI is becoming a lot more ubiquitous in manufacturing than a few years ago, but same principles exist. Erin and Dana, maybe start with Erin first. One last question, that's about cybersecurity. And of course, this is manufacturing is open to cyber attack in almost all ways, in product and process and information systems. There, what do you look for in terms of cyber protection for the data that is being used here, and what sort of training and guidelines should be in place?
That's a good question. So I don't know if I personally am the best person to answer that, because we have a whole team that just does cybersecurity. But you know, we do have some standardized policies around that, particularly when it comes to data that may be, you know, under like say GDPR, because we have a lot of European operations. So we definitely have standardizations around that we provide when it's more related to say sensitive data.
Right.
Yeah, I would agree with that. You know, I don't think my answer is going to be super satisfactory. It depends. Is your data leaving the company? Is it going, you know, cross border, cross country, cross like between plants? Is it staying internal? Is it staying on a physical computer? You know, all of those things. Is it going to the internet? All of these different levels require different considerations for data security. Also, what kind of data are you like putting out? Is it actually proprietary? Does it matter if, you know, is anyone else going to make sense of it? I think all of that. These are all like things to consider. And I just want to, you know, mention that I think the discussion today has been very general, like out of necessity. You know, the thing with AI is that it is a general tool, but it's like you can apply it to so many specific problems. And so it's like when you discuss a specific problem, that's when you can sort of get, we need this tool, we need this level of, you know, data management, we need this level of cybersecurity. It's very problem specific, which is a strength of AI, and also makes discussing AI in general difficult sometimes. So yeah.
Well, so we're just about at the end of our time, and I want to thank you both, and Nicole as well. It's been a great discussion. Thanks to everybody who's participated today. I'm sorry I didn't get to all the questions, but I do want to end on one comment, which is right at the end of our of the chat here, and that is that and it's not only in AI, but it's kind of two cultures. There's the culture of the technologist and the data scientist, and then there's the culture of the manufacturer that has a real problem to solve. And the challenge is often how do you bring these two worlds together? But I think, as you both pointed out, when you do, you get some great results here. So thank you all very much.
Yeah, thanks for all those amazing questions as well. I'm just looking through them now. I wish we had more time to talk about these. And thanks, Dana, for sharing your experience, and thanks, Jay, for moderating.
Yeah, thank you, Erin, Dana, and Nicole.
Thanks for
Yeah,
setting this up.
And
Thanks,
Frank
everyone.
for helping us out.
Thank you guys all for participating. Awesome. And with that note, just to wrap it up quickly, feel free to check out NGen online, and as well AI for Manufacturing Canada. And then as well, we are hosting a few more webinars coming up in March. So feel free to register for those. It's now open. Yeah, thank you so much for coming out today, guys.
Cheers.
Take care.
Thanks. Take care.